So I think we're here now. So welcome everyone to this week's episode of Healing Conversation. My name is Einav Avni, and I'm, the other name of Untitled Coaching. And with me here today is Sophie Runciman. And without further ado, Sophie, over to you.
Hi, einav, and hi, everybody who's here, either live or on the replay. It is such a pleasure to be here. And einav, when you first invited me and said, would you like to come and talk with me on my healing conversations? I thought, wow, that's such an honor, and I love the name. So I'm really delighted to be here and sitting with you today. And I, when you invited me and said I could talk about something, I was like, well, what should I talk about? What would be a good subject? Because normally I'm a coach who works with other coaches who don't really enjoy sales. So I really support coaches with their sales on the business side, of course, and also the spiritual side. And my real zone of genius is working with people directly and recognizing their superpowers so they can then go off and sell their programs like they never have before. But because I know that in your group, there's a whole mix of people who aren't necessarily business owners, I kind of thought, okay, I need to talk about something else. And I chose, I think it's on the title, I decided it would be really nice to talk about leaps of faith and how to take leaps of faith despite the odds. And it's really strange enough because I can really talk for hours on the how-to of sales and business, but taking leaps of faith, this is totally different to what I'm used to talking about. So I'm really kind of, I'm really hoping that it's going to be inspiring to your viewers, to everyone in this beautiful group. And for me personally, I'm just really grateful that I can be here and do this because I think intuitively I put myself in this position where I get to talk about a side of myself that I really never talk about publicly. And it's not really because it's so terrible or anything, but it's because I'm a private person and it can feel quite vulnerable to me. So I'm really grateful and thank you and to einav and also to everyone watching now or on the replay for giving me this space. And I really hope that you'll take nuggets from it and that it'll help you on your life journey and encourage you to take leaps of faith into things that are unknown, but that feel really great when you think about them. And really, I was thinking, what are leaps of faith actually? And I kind of try to define them for myself. And I'll talk about it in a minute, but really, I've changed situations in my life from birth, really. We were always moving as a family. And I think leaps of faith are more than simply changing. It's not about a change happening, but it's really deciding to do something, even though you're not quite sure how it's going to turn out. And there's this element of risk. There's an element of excitement, even maybe being scared, but in a good way. And it really, excitement and being scared is the same kind of emotion anyway, isn't it? It's just that when you're scared, you hold your breath. I love that when I first learned that. There's also this element of feeling free, in that moment where you think, wow, I can really take this leap of faith and do something that I'm not sure what it's going to turn out like. And this feeling free, it's short-lived, but it's really a beautiful feeling in that time of changing. And you definitely feel it's going to be a positive change in your life. And I think what leaps of faith also have in common is that you can't really explain properly why you have to do it, why you're doing it, because it's kind of not understood by people around you. It's not very conventional. People think, it's a risk, but there's still this really strong feeling that it's something you have to do. And I'd just be kind of curious if anyone's watching now, if you can pinpoint in your life when you've taken a leap of faith, and put it in the comments if you'd like to share it. And I've put together. Sorry, einav.
Yeah? Okay, let me share. Let me quickly share.
I know you've taken loads of leaps of faith in your life. And I mean, do you want to share one or two, Einav, or shall we continue for now?
No, please do. I sorry, I just interrupted you because I was thinking, oh yes, I want to share, but of course I.
Yeah, I mean, your leaps of faith are incredible. And if anyone's listening and doesn't know your story enough, I mean, maybe you can explain to them where they can find it, because I mean, your story is just fantastic.
Yes, sorry, it's not about me. Please continue. I will.
Oh.
I will tell my story some other time.
Yeah, but feel free to interrupt at any time. I mean, we're having a healing conversation. And really, I think really taking leaps of faith is very healing. Even, it's just a feeling I've got right now that it is actually healing to do, because you're growing, and growth and healing kind of go together. So yeah, and also, I was kind of thinking, it would be interesting for you to maybe think about how often you've taken leaps of faith in your life. And I counted together 4 or 5 main ones in my life where they've really had, had meaning for me. And they've had to do with leaving something for me. So it's been leaving a job or leaving a relationship. Often it's moving countries is involved, and really doing something that's kind of unusual, not understood, and others perceive them as dangerous, like I said, and even though it's kind of had this effect where I felt a little bit uncertain, and maybe they're right, and maybe it is dangerous, maybe it is risky, but I've still had this underlying trust that it is the right step. And despite the odds, like these are the odds I've always perceived, that this step is right, and the feelings that I have to do it are stronger, and they override the concerns that people have. And I think also the leaps of faith, you don't just do it for the sake of it. It's not just kind of, oh yeah, I'll just do it. It really takes courage, and it takes, I don't know, there's something pushing you towards it, pulling you forward, if you like, that's stronger than the fears or whatever that could be stopping you. It's like it's compelling.
I sometimes think that it's really about recognizing the fears and actually also
Mhm.
knowing that you've reached that place that you actually can't ignore this need to move forward. And you know that it's scary, but you know also that you just can't continue as you are. So
Yes,
to me, this is
totally.
how I
Yeah.
see this.
I love that. And it's kind of, I don't know if this resonates too enough, but it feels a bit like if you don't do it, it would be a mistake in your life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, and I love that. And I think you've probably heard this too. I mean, people have said to me so much. It's like, wow, you're so brave. You're so brave to do this. And I never really understood that. I was like, well, it doesn't feel like it. It's just I have to do it. But then when I've done it and it's changed, I'm looking back, then I realized, oh, wow, yeah, it was actually. I was really brave to do that. But at the time, it was just like it had to be done. It was the right thing to do. So
Yeah.
I think that's really how I would describe leaps of faith at the moment. What is there anything you'd add, Einav, or do you kind of think that's the same for you?
I think it is. I think it's the same for me as well. What I was thinking as you were saying that is that it's really about allowing your internal conversation to actually override anything that is external. So
Yeah.
people will always try and make you or kind of convince you or talk to you as if what they are doing or that there is a sense of normal and that you should conform to that normality. And then you're thinking, well, but it's not actually giving me any joy or fulfillment, or there is
Yeah.
something so huge that is missing. I can't do that. So when we connect with this internal knowing that we have to do something, then it's like nothing else matters anymore. So that's why
Yeah.
I think what you're saying, I didn't see it as bravery, but when I look back, we are able to recognize, yes, we just had to do it. And, for us, it wasn't brave. It was just there's something that we had to do. But
Yes.
yes, it's,
Yeah, I like that a lot. And you know what really strikes me as well is that sometimes I think there's this belief that you have to heal and you have to kind of have gone a long way on your healing journey to be able to do it. But
mm,
I have taken these leaps of faith throughout my life. And sometimes I was very, very I mean, very unconscious about stuff, even things that had happened to me which were traumatic for me, but I didn't realize it was trauma. It's only like a lot later in my life I realized actually I did experience trauma, but it was never recognized. But I was still able to hear this internal dialogue, this inner voice that was really pulling me towards what it is. And it doesn't have to be words even, it can really be a feeling. And I think it's really valuable to know that these leaps of faith, you don't have to wait until you develop your intuition to be able to do it. These things are there, and it's really kind of just trusting it, I suppose, knowing that, this is the thing to do.
Absolutely. I mean, I always say, and I'm sorry, but this is my favorite topic in the whole world. But I always say that actually the way I call these things is that really the intuition, of course, is our unconscious mind that is saying, right, I know what you need to do, and you really can't continue to ignore me. Because when you ignore me, you're basically listening to your negative voice that says, well, you shouldn't do anything. So we have the unconscious mind, which knows everything about us and is basically encouraging us to just take this leap of faith. And then on the other hand, we have the negative voice that's trying to say, well, you're going to fail. It's not normal. Don't do it. What are you doing? You're crazy. All of these things, right? So at the moment that this happened, we have a war, internal war between the unconscious mind that knows we should do something and the negative voice that doesn't know anything about us, but just want us to just not do. Right. So when we're connecting with the voice that knows, then we just know, we just trust that, do you know what? It also, what I like to say is that it's either going to be perfect and gets us to the results that we want, or it's going to take us to where we need to be for the lessons that will then take us to the best results. And when we are able to disconnect from the fear and the worry of all the details and needing to know everything, when we're able to just say, do you know what? I really trust. I trust that I will find the answers. I trust that the right opportunities will come my way. Then it feels really, really empowering. And you recognize the fear, because we always have the fear, but we also know that we are in the right place, exactly where we are meant to be.
Yes, I love that. So well explained. And I think I've forgotten now. I was going to say something. What did I want to say about that? I just lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, in my experience, I'll talk about the 4 or 5 moments where I took this leap of faith. I don't recall having a huge amount of internal dialogue going on, telling me not to. It was more the outside, and I think for me, it was even kind of a kind of stubbornness, that I'm definitely doing this. And it's kind of the certainty was in me because I knew, and this was quite special for me because for reasons of my past, and maybe I can explain a little bit about my background. This is where it will get a bit more personal. I really wasn't able to discern that well what I really wanted because I hadn't been allowed to do that as a child. And so when I had these moments of I have to do this, and some things really were very unusual and not understood, and it wasn't so much the internal voice, it was kind of the negative voice, but it was more going against the mainstream but daring to do that, just feeling that I had to do it. In my experience, and it's usually the internal dialogue for me is when the negative voice, don't do that, that's when I'm not so 100% sure, that I find that the more difficult thing, to really be sure about the decision, I guess.
It is really what you're saying. What I'm hearing is sometimes it's really difficult to say, actually, what I'm about to do, no one else in my environment has ever done. And so everyone is looking, connecting with their fears, and then they say, well, don't do it and then they give you all of these reasons. And now you need to say, well, do I need to listen to you, or can I actually listen to me? And when we're connecting with that voice that knows, then we're able to say, actually, it really doesn't matter what you're thinking, because I can't live my life through your fears. I have to do what is right for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is just other thing to also, I think that is important to bring into the conversation, is that sometimes we really know what we don't want, but don't really know what we do want. And so then that can be like that phase that influence can come in, and we can get influenced by other people's opinions and fears. So just wanted to throw it out there. But please continue. I want to hear about your journey.
I think that's a really important point, because sometimes these leaps of faith are driven by I want to get away from rather than I want to go to. And so that can be a little bit more unstable, I think, because you're not really sure where you want to go to, but you're more maybe influenceable.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, before I give my couple of examples about where I had leaps of faith in my life, where I took them, maybe just so to give you a bit of context, I can explain a little bit about my background and how my life was growing up. And basically, I mean, anyone looking in at my life would have probably gone, "Oh, it's a great life." And that was part of the problem, because I didn't recognize that it hadn't been so good, So basically, and I'm not saying that it wasn't good for anyone, but I think for my character, for my being, it wasn't ideal. But it all worked out fine, but it's like stories are in life, you look back and go, oh, that maybe actually wasn't so good, but it's just the way it was, and you also benefit from whatever it was you experienced. But anyway, just to explain a little bit, I was born in England, in Manchester, and when I was a couple of weeks old, my parents decided to relocate to Germany. So we moved to Germany, and we moved even within the city where we lived. We moved to Frankfurt, and then when I was 4, we moved back to England, and then back to Germany. And so there's a whole load of moving. I think I counted it at one point, and before I was 9, we'd moved like 10 times or something. So absolutely crazy. It wasn't really necessary, but my parents just moved.
Yeah.
Because it involved countries, it also meant, a new language, obviously new schools, kind of this pressure to perform and do well. As I was always a high achiever, wanted to do well, and at the same time this desire to fit in, but at the same time being different but not wanting to be different. And all I really knew was change. And I really craved connection. I really craved this security of having a place, and I'll talk more about place in a minute, what I mean by that. But I craved this connection, and I didn't really find it inside my family, because with all the moving and various things, I then had 2 younger brothers, and there were things going on, and basically there was no time for connection. Everyone was kind of just it had too much on their plates. What's that?
So there was no time. Everyone was always just packing and unpacking, and it's like,
Exactly. I mean, that's probably the picture. Always living in boxes or from boxes, and so anyway, I got connection that I needed from friends, and I loved going to school, and I loved my activities in the afternoon. So I was kind of looked after very well. My parents loved us, but they didn't really know what they were doing, And there's this really interesting book. It's called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. And if you haven't read this book, I recommend it. It's very easy to read, and it really explains well how, as a child, if your parents are not up to the task because they've got emotional wounds themselves which haven't ever been looked at, and they're just kind of coping just about, children will step in and take responsibility. They feel that it's their job to help and to sort this out, because they can sense all these gaps, really.
Yeah.
And so this is what I did. So, became very capable, took responsibility, was a high achiever. I was always rewarded for doing things well and criticized when I didn't. And so this is kind of my life, and my brothers too. My brothers coped with it very differently. I coped with it by excelling, doing well. I even was, very interested in, not interested, I really enjoyed going to church youth groups and being in this kind of community. I loved this community in France called Tézé, and spirituality. So all this was kind of where I like to go. So in a way, I ticked that box. I was a good girl. But my brothers took to taking hard drugs. So they started taking drugs when they were about 13 and 14 or something. So it really, I mean, that rocked our whole world in the most awful way. And anyone who can relate to drug addiction in any form, you know what it means. And so it was really, I don't know, there's this kind of to the outside world, we all portray this image of everything's fine and we're all doing well. But inside, it's kind of, my word, what is going on? You know, an absolute worry and fear, and it's even more important that I did well and was good, you know. So this is kind of my growing up, and I then moved back to England when I was 19 and went to university there, and I discovered the fun and the escapism of going out drinking, partying, you know, just letting my hair down. And while on the one hand, it was very good for me to just, you know, really let my hair down and lose inhibitions and really discover another part of me, it really wasn't so beneficial because I also found the perfect way to numb myself from all the pain that had gathered subconsciously. I didn't realize it was there, nor did I have any idea that I was numbing myself or running away. And so I didn't understand that my childhood hadn't been all that happy because nothing terrible had happened. There's no abuse and really no trauma. But why was I always searching? Why was I kind of unhappy? And why was I unable to find a life partner? And none of this really made sense. So I went on numbing myself, while on the outside having this really good corporate career and moving up the career ladder, and on the outside looking good. So I was really continuing with this pattern. And I was so wrong about the happy childhood, and it was really me in this pattern of protecting my parents. I still tend towards that today. I think of them and think, can I do this? Will it affect them? You know, which isn't how life is meant to be. And I'm working on this, you know, because I you know, I realize now, because I did a qualification in psychotherapy, and that, you know, this is what actually has been going on all my life. But I had no idea about that back then. And really, you know, it's this feeling, or the trauma that arises from being silenced as a child, you know, being told how to think, what to say, who to be. And this kind of education that you get, with the best intentions, of course, you end up not really knowing what it is that you want, and then not trusting your own judgment, not trusting your own decisions, and not really knowing your intuition. And I think, you know, I think why I really wanted to share this with you is that because maybe somebody out there is going to relate to this and realize that actually, even though everything looks perfect looking back, these things can happen too. And this is also trauma. And I think it's really helpful to understand this, not in a way of judging anyone in the past, but just understanding more how you can free yourself from it and become who you really want to be, who you really are, without all the patterns and projections and everything that have been put onto you from birth. Okay, so yeah, and on top of this, just also because this is something I only learned about 4 or 5 years ago, so quite late, I hadn't realized that medical procedures that you have as a baby and onwards, you know, your childhood, especially pre-verbal, these really have an effect similar to abuse. So you're getting things put into your body, you know, it's all for your own good. But as a baby, you're in pain, you don't understand, you're alone, you're frightened, you feel abandoned. And this is what happened to me. So even though I was surrounded by so much love and I was so very wanted as a baby, I had these medical procedures, which I didn't realize that they had this deep effect on my psyche. And it really took me to about 4 or 5 years ago when I started my psychotherapy qualification, which I did with Al Pesso's method. It's PBSP, and it's the most amazing method, which uses the body, which when you have this kind of trauma in you, your body isn't really part of you. You don't really notice your body until you start working with it a little bit. And it uses your body to actually heal things that didn't go quite right when you were growing up.
Mm.
So yeah, I mean, I've talked for ages now, but is there anything you'd like to say, Einav, or should I just continue?
No, please continue.
Okay.
I'm really enjoying listening to what you're saying, and hearing the reflections and the learnings that you've made along the way, because I really recognize what you're saying. Of course, maybe some for my life and for my clients' life and stuff. It's it's really easy to find yourself in that place of saying, okay, here I am, and obviously I'm the results of everything that has ever happened to me, and my experiences, my good things, my bad things. Here I am. But when you recognize that it's actually not working for you and that something needs to change, it's really challenging to then say, okay, I'll just go back into my authentic self, because you no longer know what is your authentic
Mm.
self. You've covered it with so many layers that you don't know what it is, what it looks like, how to react, how to behave. So I really, I'm really enjoying listening to your conversation, because I can definitely recognize this journey that you've been on, and I'm enjoying that we're talking about it. It's definitely, I'm
Oh,
sure it's going to resonate with a lot of people.
oh, thank you, thank you. It really is important to me to really bring awareness to this, because
Mm,
especially today, there's so much emphasis placed on being authentic and being you. But it's like you said, you don't always know what this means when you've
yeah.
had this kind of background, and so many people have, but that not many people really maybe know about that. So.
Mm,
What I'd love to share with you actually, the 5 basic needs. I've got them written down here somewhere. Here they are. Um, the 5 basic needs according to Al Pesso's work. So there are the 5 emotional needs that need to be in place and need to be fulfilled as a baby. And the premise is that every baby experiences something, or they experience everything for the very first time. So you have your first, your first drink of milk, then you have the first nappy change, then you maybe have the first medical exam, your first night's sleep. So everything happens for the first time.
mhm,
And if I mean, just let's take an example. So we have 2 babies. One baby is born into the most beautiful circumstances. They have caring parents, they have time, they're calm, the room is beautiful, airy, and feels very safe and very protected. And they have their first nappy change. Okay, so this is just the first experience. And the second baby maybe is born into a family that maybe there's substance abuse, they're living in a dirty, cold flat somewhere, there's maybe a war zone, so there's bombing going on. So you can imagine what's going on in these 2 babies from the
mm,
very first moments of life. And this makes it influences hugely the life that they're going to live. And so Al Pesso developed, or he established these 5 needs that he says that everyone needs to experience ideally for their lives to be, for their child to be able to develop in an ideal way, and for the
mm,
child to be and become his or her true self. And these needs are, the first one is place, which is in my case very interesting, because I didn't really have a place. We moved when I was a few weeks old, and then we continued moving. So it's really about having a physical place in this world, and
mm.
also in your parents' hearts. It's really feeling, oh, I'm safe in this place.
So it's belonging.
Sorry.
So can I say belonging? Is that
Yeah, yeah,
sense of
I'd
belonging?
say, yeah, he calls it place, but yeah, absolutely, I'd say belonging is definitely, you have a sense of belonging. Yeah, I like that.
Mm, okay.
The second need, a very basic needs, but the second one is a nurturance. So basically, initially food, later on intellectual. Just being nurtured by your parents. Also tactile. That you're caressed, and you feel, again, you feel like you have you. It's kind of this feeling that, wow, this is how it should be, and you can kind of go, ah, this is it. This feeling that kind of is what needs to happen. It's what we humans need. This feeling of this is right.
Mm.
So food is the second one. The third one is support. So initially, of course, it's supporting, carrying an infant, making them, feel they're supported, they're safe, they're not going to be dropped. It's this kind of support. Later on, again, it's having someone stand up for you, and you know that you're safe in that way.
Mm.
The fourth need is protection. So protection is kind of obvious, I suppose, that, being protected from the outside world. And the fifth one is limits. So it's like boundaries. And I really find this one very, very interesting, because if you don't have boundaries, it's you can kind of think, oh, in that case, I won't be safe. Yes, but it goes beyond that. It goes in the direction of, if you have no boundaries, and as a baby, you kind of sense that you're a limitless being. You can do, you can just be whoever you want to be. But if you don't have anyone containing this power,
Mm.
it doesn't feel safe to really express yourself fully, and to show yourself and really use your power. So in life, you're going to always be holding back in some way, because you haven't experienced being able to just, I don't know, even have a tantrum and shout and scream and throw things and hit around you. If you have someone, an adult, holding you and contain you, protecting you in that way, you're going to realize it's safe to actually express myself and show my full power, because I can be held. I really love that one. I think obviously that didn't happen for me either, because it really resonates strongly with me. And it's really helpful, I think, if you go through these, like place, nurturance, support, protection, and limits for yourself, and just tick off which ones where you kind of go, oh yeah, definitely have that. And more likely there are going to be several where you might not tick that box. And these are really worth exploring, because when you heal these at a level where you feel this is how it should have been, and ideally even using this method, there are PBSP therapists, and I work with this as well myself. And there's this real feeling that is called click of closure, where you feel that that's how it should have been. And this works out. It actually, when you're in the here and now, in your life now, and you're taking decisions, you're going to remember this feeling of, this is how it should have been, before your brain goes back to the traumatized way of thinking before. So it's
Right.
like the pathway, your neural pathways have been replaced in a way. So it's very healing, and it's a very fast method as well. So
I like
so
that.
yeah, this is what I learned in the in this PBSP qualification that I did, and it really helps move
So
ahead.
wait, I have some questions.
Go for it.
Because I definitely, what you're saying. I also say to people, when I say, actually, when we now recognize what we don't want, now we need to start creating new pathways, right? To
Mm,
rewire our brains, so that with repetition we can decide, we can have a new behavior. And so I like what you're saying about this click of closure, because um, you know then it happens. So when your brain wants to go back into its patterns and its habits, you can say, actually, not anymore. We've made a change. We've grown in
mhm.
some way. We have a new way to now look at things. I really like that.
Yeah, I love
Um,
that too. And really, I mean, the click of closure happens at a very subconscious level. I mean, or let's put it this way, you feel it. It's like you really can kind of
yeah,
sigh and go, wow, that's amazing. But at a subconscious level, it really is incredible what effects it has, to the point of things kind of, even bizarre things happening. All of a sudden, an estranged friend texts you that same evening when you've had a session, and reaches out to you again. These things have happened to me, and also to people I've met who are also doing the same qualification. And it's quite incredible, the things that are put in motion by daring to go there, by having a look at
yeah.
these things. Yeah.
But I think because what basically, what I'm getting from what you just said is that basically before that click of closure, our brains continually trying to go to that place and kind of find answers that we can't find by ourselves. So it's exploring and what about this, what about that, trying always to try and find the answers. And actually, when you have that click of closure, as you say, actually it is a closure, because now we find the answers and we don't have to go and explore anymore.
Yeah.
um so is so I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
have so
No,
many questions.
yeah, no, and it's totally so. And I think really what happens with this experience is that that's where healing happens. The healing takes place.
Yeah, yeah, because you don't no longer need to start, to continue to explore. You've got your answer, and then
Yeah,
you can make peace with it and saying, actually, it didn't happen that way, but fine.
yeah, yeah,
um,
exactly. Yeah,
so is this like, is it with hypnosis that you do this, or is it because you're saying it's on the
not at
subconscious?
all.
It's just conversations.
It's really, really, I mean, I love it so much because you generally go into a session and you have no idea what you're going to talk about. Or even if you think, okay, I want to talk about this is bothering me. But then in the course of the conversation, very quickly, it's not like you have to spend hours talking about the past. You can be talking about the film you saw last night, and that can develop into going really deep into an aspect where maybe your parents weren't able to look after you in the way you would have needed them to. This is triggered by the film you saw, and it just in the one 3/4 of an hour session, you can get this click of closure on this aspect of your life by
Mm.
experiencing how an ideal situation would have been for you.
And is it also then, because I have no idea now where it's coming from, but in a lot of healing or therapies and stuff, they kind of help you to recognize from the adult point of view how maybe what your parents didn't know or what you didn't know as a child, but now as an adult. Is that also how it's how it's actually happening, or is it really different?
I'd say it's really different. Of course, because of the way I learned it, I also learned a lot of the psychology behind things. But if you're just a patient going to a PBSP coach or a PBSP therapist, then you're not necessarily going to be explained how it all fits together. Sometimes there can be teachings within a session that
Mm.
can happen. And personally, I like to understand things and I really like to have things explained. But it's not necessary. These things can really happen just without you realizing what's going on. And the session continues to work for 4 to 6 weeks after you've had it. So things really switch on a subconscious level.
Right. And so basically, I'm sorry, I have quite a few questions.
It's okay. I love it.
But is it basically the understanding is that for sure one of these five needs would have not were not met to then influence who we are at the moment, at least one of them, or at least
Um,
how is it? How do I ask it? So the understanding
yeah.
is that probably most of us had at least one of these things not met to make us, the mess that we are at the moment.
I mean, the basic needs. I mean, no. Let's. I don't think I have it in my mind now. I mean, El Peso has this beautiful quote. It's kind of it goes along the lines of with this therapy method, we're trying to it's kind of making the best out of an imperfect world. So it's kind of living the most perfect life you can in an imperfect world, which is our world. Nothing's ever going to be 100% perfect. And the
Mm.
basic needs, they don't have to be perfectly met. But if all five are a disaster and none of them gave you any sense of security, you're going to not have the same start in life as someone where everything was pretty much as perfect as it can be. So it's really understanding that it's not your fault, I guess. It's this relief of realizing actually, in fact, it's no one's fault. It's just really I had these needs, they weren't met, and now I understand why. And but let's feel how it would have felt had it been met. And this
Mm.
experience, and usually is done in a group. So you have people who can be there to contain you if that's what you need to experience, so I mean, I've experienced a session where one person was wanting to experience it, really using her strength, and there are about 8 adults around her because that's what it was needed to help give her this feeling that worked as well, so that she wasn't stronger than the group, basically. That's just one example. But I think what's really so special about this method is that it's very physical. It's your body experiencing it.
I like that. And it
Yeah.
also,
Sorry.
sorry.
Feel free.
It just came to me that basically when we experience things as adults, we are able to disconnect from the fears and whatever we were feeling as babies, because we didn't know, right? We were just going through it, and we were experiencing, but we didn't make sense of it. But now looking at it from the adult point of view, we can say, okay, now I have the awareness. It didn't happen as it should have, but now I understand why I'm in the way that I am now. So
Yes.
really being able to get the closure.
Yeah, and also really even appreciating that what you did was absolutely right because it was necessary in order for you to survive. You had to do that. And there's this immense relief when you realize, actually, there's nothing wrong with me. I have everything in me that is necessary for me to live this really amazing, fulfilled life. And I did nothing wrong. It was really my survival instinct that kicked in. But now it's not so useful. So now it makes sense for me to drop that and replace it with something that would have been more ideal.
Interesting. And so, but actually this exactly thing that you just said about replace it with something that is more ideal. This is what I was saying earlier, that sometimes when you find, when you look to your authentic self, you don't know.
Yeah.
So in this case, the same thing, right? Like, what is the more ideal? I don't know,
But you
because I know
realize
what I
that
don't want.
because it's not in your head. It's in the session. It happens, and it just happens organically, and it's often with you experience it with your body. So and it
Right.
works even over Zoom without the group. Then you just maybe take when I'm doing these sessions, and I tell people to have things ready so they can take them, and it can just be having like this blanket wrapped around you, which represents the hug that you needed as a child and never had. So you have this feeling of, wow, I've got this contact, and it's amazing what our minds can do. It works. It's not obviously as ideal as having a real person step into that role, but it still works amazingly well. If you're someone who has an imagination that can really put yourself into that position. Not everyone can do that, but generally, I think a lot of people who are open and interested in doing this, trying it out for themselves, they are able to have this kind of imagination going on in them. So it does work well.
And one more question. So you mentioned babies, but how is it? Just really that first experience, or no? It's a few.
It
I'm not trying
continues.
to
It
answer.
continues. Yeah. I mean, it can
So
even be later on as well in life. Something that wasn't ideal. Maybe, I don't know. You had a boyfriend who was gaslighting you all the time. You can experience how it would have been to have a boyfriend who was perfect for you. The ideal boyfriend.
but I imagine that this is because you already experienced it, so you're more vulnerable in that sense. But when we talk about, because I was kind of talking when you answered, so I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Oh,
But
I'm lost now. I'm lost. What?
so
So
I'm
you're
just asking.
asking whether it can be later on in life as well that you
Well, yes. So you answered that question, but then I was wondering, when we say as babies we need these 5 needs met, the definition of a baby, is it just newborns, or is it really all about the babyhood period, or
Yeah, I mean,
anything?
it's the whole babyhood period. It's the most. I guess it's a really good question because I mean we do experience everything for the first time, and that's really it's very important. Or it's kind of, I don't know. It's kind of important that it happens in an ideal way, and at the same time, babies are incredibly resilient. So it's not like it's going to be a disaster if things don't work out ideally. It continues though in life. with repetition, things can get harder or more strongly ingrained in you. It can be some situation where it's resulting from childhood, but you're actually traumatized by it as an adult at some point. You can still find healing from it by having a session in this method.
Mm. I
Does that
definitely
answer your
understand.
question? I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so it is really fascinating, and I when I first heard about this therapy method, I was really interested in it because I loved the idea of therapy, but I didn't like the idea of spending years and years talking about the same thing. Nor did I want to spend years as a therapist listening to everything for years, and so I really liked the idea that this can really bring about deep changes on a very subconscious level, and it happens quickly as well. It doesn't mean to say that you have one session and your life's healed. I mean, it's not on that level either, of course, but
Mm.
really you can take specific things that are bothering you and really within 2 or 3 sessions notice a big difference.
Right. So that's what you do. You bring one topic to a conversation, you work on it however many sessions you need, and then you move on to something else if you need to. But then
Yeah,
you said
yeah.
something 4 to 6 weeks is usually is a kind of length of time. Is that what you said?
Well,
Or
that's kind of when you have a session, how long it continues working in your subconscious. It's what was being estimated, you know. Of course, it's different for everyone, but you can expect to notice things happening, developing, you know, for 4 to 6 weeks after you've had the session.
right.
But you know, when like in my case, you subconsciously as a child, you instinctively reacted and took care of your parents as you thought. And in my mind, I was looking after my parents. Of course, I wasn't, but that's what I felt I was doing emotionally.
Mm.
Um, this is what they call holes in roles. So basically, my parents weren't fulfilling the role they needed to fulfill, and I stepped in as this, you know, super
Mm.
child, and I, you know, took over these roles. But basically, I shouldn't have done it. Would have been their role to do it. So I needed the healing from this, and also I needed to see them having enough resources inside them that they didn't need me to do this. So this is kind of, you know, we're going quite deep into it now, but this is
Mm.
what I experienced, and it's not just a one-off. You see it once and that's it. There are several memories, or lots of memories that can come up, and they're things that happen then over time. You know,
Mm.
yeah.
Fascinating. I really think it's fascinating. And also, Siga is saying she's very interesting conversation. Totally agree.
Yeah, oh, I'm glad. Yeah, it's lovely talking about it, and you're asking great questions.
So you're saying that you actually you now the practitioner as well, right? You
Yes, I
yeah.
am. So I, you know, not everyone who comes to me, especially in sales, you know, it's not the thing that's first and foremost on their minds usually, but it is something that when we do it, it really, you know, it really strengthens them. So as a part of what I offer, I mean, this is always there, and some people are really open to it, and other people, it doesn't even really come up. So it depends on what you're looking for. But you know, if you have money blocks or you're lacking confidence in sales, we can definitely look at what might be behind there. You know, what could have maybe happened in, you know, earlier on in your life that made you believe a certain thing about yourself, and then have the antidote. You know, this experiencing the absolute opposite of what you would have needed to hear and see and experience in that moment. And then
Mm.
with this strengthening inside you, it's kind of even like magic that then you go out and experience sales calls very, very differently.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Sounds very empowering.
Yeah, it is. I obviously love it, and I love it because it really, you know, I've experienced it in my own life, and I also see it with other people where it really changes things, and you become so much more aware of things and understand what shouldn't have really happened, but because it did, this is why things are going on like this now, but I can actually change it. So yeah, it is
Mm.
good.
I really like that. It's I've never heard of it, but I'm fascinated by what you're saying, and I recognize that yes, you know, like I said earlier, that our mind, especially when we are, you know, keep experiencing our traumas, we keep going back to the same stories and the same questions and the same, unfairness of things or unjust of things. And actually, I really like this idea that now we find another way of doing it, so we can just let go of all of this weight and stuff that we're carrying around with us, and saying,
Yes.
actually, we have a choice. Here it is. Now I can do things differently. I think
Yes. Yeah,
it's
no, it's so true. I love the way you summarized it. And it is like that. And when you have this click of closure, this feeling of relief, it can be coupled with grief. We call it relief grief because
mm,
it didn't happen that way. And it can be really sad to really, really feel that again, that wow, it didn't happen that way. But that as well is healing. It's not like pushing it away as if it never happened. You feel it, but you have also experienced the ideal way it should have been. And that's what stays with you.
this is exactly, it's so interesting because this is exactly what I've been talking with quite a few of my clients this week. And it's all about
Mm.
how they recognize the grief, the sadness about something, and they don't know why. And I say to them, actually, with walking with them, I recognize that the sadness is about an idea that they had in their mind that actually didn't materialize. So it is
Mm.
that gap between what they were hoping and what they had in real life. And
Yeah.
actually, what I then help them see is that we need to ask not why did it happen to me, because I'm a victim, but actually why did it happen for me? And
Mm.
now you have so many more empowering tools to help you see how you can use that to for what purpose you have on this earth. So it's a completely different conversation, very
Mm.
empowering, very freeing. So I really like what you're saying and reminding us that yes, there is a grief, but there's also freedom that is associated with it.
Yeah, totally. And you're so true what you're saying, asking the right questions, asking empowering questions, and why is kind of the worst question you can be asking, really, isn't it? Because you lose any kind of power in yourself. And why me? Why did this happen? And instead, so why, what's and in fact, it was a why question. Why is this happening for me? But having
Yeah,
the for me instead of to me. Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah,
love that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
so enough. Are we running out of time?
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yes, we could have continued talking for hours and hours.
I
So
know.
let's take this as a natural pause and just say before I say thank you, I'll just say that I will put all of your links in the comments. So if anyone wants to reach out and have a conversation with you, they will know where to do it. But thank
Yes.
you, Sophie, so much for this really enlightening conversation. Really enjoyed having you here. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure being here and a real honor to be able to speak on your healing conversations. That name is just really, it's so beautiful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll just end our broadcast. 1 second. Bye, everyone. Bye, Siga.
Bye.